right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this incredible launch this morning. I'm so excited. Welcome, Sandeep. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Kirsty. Really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Well, we were just talking offline just then that this is actually not just, oh, I love you guys, I'll do this for you. This is a deep passion of mine. So I'm really looking forward to this morning. And a lot of people might know that EMFs are an issue. They might just have heard it around. But today we're going to really get into some nitty-gritty of how EMFs can impact us. So just to let everyone know, as they're joining on this morning, we're going to talk about the hosts of this course, which is Sandeep and Chris. We're going to go through some questions and really talk about how EMFs can impact us. And then we're going to discuss the awesome course that you guys are launching, which I'm really excited about. Because I know this information is quite difficult to find. Peer-reviewed research information is quite difficult to find. Actionable tips and actual what can I do to support myself is hard to find. So I'm really excited you guys have gone out and made this happen. And it's been a long journey. It's been a labor of love. So, you know, this is really cool that you've done this. So as people are joining on, there's not too many housekeeping things that we need to do today, but I would love for you to ask questions. If you've got questions, pop them up in the chat, and then we will refer back to them at the end of the talk. So we'll get through all the information first up, and then, yes, please put your information there. We will talk about the course in detail, the cost of the course, what's involved, what's included at the end of the webinar. But right at the start, we want to get into some nitty-gritty. So alrighty, let's get started. So who are these two people on the call and who am I? So today, all I'm doing is hosting, and my name's Kirsty Worth, and I'm the founder of a company called Cultured Wellness. And I am really, really, really fascinated by all things gut microbiome health and very interested in this information. But let's get started. Chris, I'm going to introduce you first. So Chris Henderson is one of the amazing contributors to this course we're launching today.
The main contributor.
What was that, Sandy?
The main contributor.
The main contributor. There we go. And he's a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. So focusing on coaching clients and implementing lifestyle strategies to improve their health and to support a healthier indoor environment. And I think this is really important that you've put this here, Chris, about like the detail of even lighting and all of the information that we need to learn about our house, because that can be quite overwhelming. And as all practitioners that get into this space, you've obviously got your own health journey. So heavy metal toxicity through mercury and amalgams, vaccine injury as a young child, EMF sensitivities, and playing an important role in forming the safe technology groups on the Sunshine Coast, which collaborates with EMF experts to provide this up-to-date information and solutions. So welcome, Chris. I'm really excited to get started today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And also Dr. Sandeep Gupta. So Sandeep, we've had some wonderful chats already together over the years. And
here we have.
Sandeep, you're an integrative practitioner, integrative medicine GP on the Sunshine Coast. And you really do, and I know this passion very clearly, have a passion for chronic illness and finding the root cause around that and addressing these. So you graduated from medical school at the Uni of Queensland in 1999. So it's been a while since you've been practicing. And also have fellowships in the Australian College of Nutrition and Environmental Medicine and also the Australian College of General Practitioners. So you are also a physician training with Dr. Shoemaker on biotoxin illness and a Master of Nutrition with Dr. Gabrielle Cousins?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, in diabetes and living food nutrition. Now, I didn't know this one, which is pretty cool. You're currently completing a diploma in nutrition balancing and body psychotherapy. I wish we had more time to talk about that. And
yeah, they're two separate courses, actually. Yeah, one's the nutritional balancing through hair analysis, and one's body psychotherapy. So, you know, must be a sucker for ongoing learning.
Yes, yeah, I hear you. And you're also board member of the Australian Chronic Infectious and Inflammatory Disease Society. and also past founding member of the International Society of Acquired Environmental Illness. So we can see that there is a long history of really in-depth inquiry and curiosity around environmental toxins, how this can impact our health, and what we can do about it. So thank you to both of you for contributing the information and knowledge to this space. It's wonderful. So welcome.
Thanks so
All
much.
right.
Thank you.
Let's get started. So we've got a few questions. So let's get going. So Chris, you're first on this one. So tell us about your health journey and how have you become so interested in EMFs?
Yeah, it's been a long passion too. I mean, 20 years. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in my late teens and had major surgery for that, and then had a secondary autoimmune condition pop up 10 years later, musculoskeletal condition. And so I studied FDN in 2016 because I wanted to get to the root cause and understand what lab testing I needed to do and supplement and lifestyle changes I needed to do to support those conditions. And then along the way, I think the FDN sort of inquiry, they get you to look at different aspects. And I think EMF came up through that level of inquiry. And it was just humming around in my mind during the time I was consulting with clients. How can I bring this to them? And it was actually one of the instigators of it was in Australia. I think the ABC ran a piece called Wi-Fried, and the journalist was, she was sacked 3 or 4 days after the piece came out, and that got me interested and wondering and asking why. So that was just humming around, but 2018 was the real crux for me. I went to Melbourne and I was in Melbourne for 10 days and I had massive flare-ups of both autoimmune conditions. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't walk, and synchronistically at the time, I was actually trying to engage an EMF expert to do a talk for a group that I ran. And lo and behold, I get connected to one of the world's preeminent experts. And I was able to ring him in the backyard in Melbourne and go, hey, what is going on with this? I've got no idea what's happening. He said, right, you have to go back to the start. You have to go back to the power grid. You have to understand the wiring in your home. And that really started that in curiosity and investigative passion. A big sign for me is when I came back home from Queensland 10 days later, all the symptoms abated pretty much instantaneously. I'm like, what was that? And then I had our expert friend do a talk for us, and then my mind was just blown, and I had to add this in as part of the health coaching profile that I did. And then obviously over the last 3 or 4 years, I've implemented almost everything I was taught, and that has, and I must, hand on heart, I've done a lot, especially through FDN and integrative medicine. But for me, without those things, I would still be way behind on my health. So the environmental home remediation for all the EMF has been the main part of my journey to get my health to where it is today. So from there, like I mentioned, Sandeep and I connected when 5G was launched in 2019. I was doing public talks around the coast, and I think that maybe lit that light inside of him to do some more investigation. And then we went into COVID, and Sandeep and I hosted some of the world's foremost doctors and experts in EMF on webinars, and we've just gone from there. And then he tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, do you want to build a course? I said, yeah, sure, let's do it. So that's where we were. That's sort of the timeline.
Amazing. So then it was extracting out of your brain into this course everything that you've learned. And I think the most important thing when someone writes a course in a space like this is the application of the knowledge is actually really key, because it can be quite overwhelming, and what's dirty electricity and all of these different kinds of things that we have to understand, and being able to apply that into your home, and whether you're living in an apartment building or out in the bush or all these different places, it's overwhelming. So it's really important to be able to unpack it and make it easy for people to make actionable steps. Because I remember when I first started learning about this, I just was like, I thought, oh, I'm just going to have to go and live in the bush full time. That's the only answer, and you get quite overwhelmed. So yeah, that's great. So, Chris, why should we be thinking about EMFs if we're dealing with a chronic health problem? Why does it need to be right at the forefront of our curiosity and right up there with getting our bloods checked? And for me, I'm always going to get someone to get their stool checked. So why would we put it right up there on the top sort of pillar of information?
Yeah, for sure. I wondered when I was coaching where it actually fit, and the aha moment for me came when I was listening to Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt chat about his client cohort groups and client groups that had Lyme and chronic illness, and that he would in his model basically address the EMF factor at the beginning, and he wouldn't actually take on clients unless they did the remediation, especially in their sleeping spaces. And I was like, wow, if someone of his level and degree of understanding of chronic disease processes is doing that, I need to have a look at it. So that's how I adopted that myself. And I think if you want to like wind it down and diffuse it down to the common denominator is your sleep. So I'm very big on the reason why you do it is if you've got a chronic illness, you're not repairing, you're not replacing cells at the right rate, and your sleep is definitely a time, like the main thing, like your superpower is in your sleep, and all this EMF and blue light is basically the kryptonite. And if you can get that part of it sorted out, then you can definitely be much further ahead and advanced in your protocols and actually have the protocols work better instead of being behind the 8 ball. So everyone understands sleep, everyone understands why that's important, but we bring in that EMF factor to it. And that's why I would say it's so important for people with chronic illness to actually adopt these strategies, because they need to basically enhance their sleep and ability to recover.
It's such an important topic. So, you know, if I go away somewhere and I lie in bed and my heart rate's up because I can't, and therefore can't sleep, if I'm in a hotel room, for example, if I'm going to speak somewhere, I will literally get up and walk around, and sure enough, I'll open a door and there's the big modem, or this is turned on or that's turned on. And so instead of lying there with your heart rate up and not being able to sleep and getting anxious, we can have that knowledge to be curious in the environment. Why is this blocking one of the key pillars of me being able to recover and to keep going the next day? So yeah, I think that's wonderful that we see that as such an important aspect, especially with regards to sleep.
And so just people understand that EMFs and artificial frequencies affect your melatonin. It's as simple as that. So that's your key to getting proper REM sleep and recovery.
Yeah, amazing. And we have so many cool things that we can use to track now to see that. You know, we can have a look at our sleep progress, our heart rate. We can see it's affecting us. It's not sort of is it this, is it that? It's very known. So yeah, that's wonderful. So Sandeep, you've got a journey with environmental toxins as well, which is why you're so fascinated in this area. I mean, why would people get involved in this area unless they're fascinated and it's impacted them? So tell me about your journey into EMFs and health, and what's your insights on this subject?
Yeah, so it hasn't just been one specific particular experience. I guess it's been a number of successive experiences, and so I was going down the pretty conventional pathway of being like a specialist doctor. I was working in cardiology and anesthetics and emergency medicine all around the Brisbane area, and finally settled on doing intensive care medicine. And I really found that that's one of the areas in which modern medicine does shine. When you've got someone really acutely unwell, let's say with a trauma or with heart surgery, and just being able to use those technologies to sustain their life, of course, is very powerful. But I did find after really looking into many of these patients that after leaving the intensive care unit, often they would still have lingering symptoms, and that could be things like joint pains, fatigue, their memory might be a bit off, and a range of other things. Sleep could be one of them. And that often made me think that there was still some kind of inflammatory process going on that needed to be looked at. And then I myself had my first little bout of my little brush with sickness in 2005. after taking a very strong antibiotic when I was in the USA, and coming back and basically having massive headaches and really no energy and a lot of gut symptoms and a lot of mood symptoms. So that made me realize that, whoa, something as innocuous, supposedly, as an antibiotic could actually have very far-reaching effects on the microbiome. And I was able to heal myself basically through internet research. And I guess you could say that was my disillusionment moment, which was like, well, hang on, why aren't we being taught about the microbiome? Why aren't we being taught that there's a balance that's needed? If someone takes antibiotics, for instance, that there needs to be some balancing treatment as well. And so then my next little experience was having a house flood in 2011, 2012 here on the Sunshine Coast, and getting some symptoms myself, but my partner at the time becoming bedbound, and just realizing how an environmental toxin as widespread as mold in a susceptible person could actually lead to a major health breakdown, and studying that quite intensely for a few years. And then having recovered from that myself as well, and then just having some lingering energy problems. EMF has been one thing that I've come to realize is a factor. And I've had some building biologists come have a look at my house and put in place some interventions, including, just running totally wired internet, as you've done, Kirsty, and also having an EMF canopy over my bed. And just seeing the benefits of doing so has made me more and more curious. And now just going through the research, but particularly with regard to EMF and pathogens, and seeing that there really is some very interesting published research on these aspects, looking at that these frequencies can really have an effect on the bugs in our body, and whether that actually turns into an inflammatory illness or not. So that's been my series of steps into it, I guess.
Yeah, amazing. There's a beautiful common theme between the two of you that I just love so much, which is that curiosity of what can I learn, what can I understand, how can I apply that? And it's just so important. We've had an incredible full moon just recently, and I find it very interesting that there's flares of pathogens like parasites and worms, and then we have more and more people and more kids sitting on their iPads, being on their screens, Wi-Fi at night. We've got a real surge in these issues. And so we need to be curious. We need to ask questions. And I think for a lot of people, actually removing themselves from the environment and seeing what their set point is. And that's something that's not encouraged either. So I think this is a wonderful theme that you guys have got about that curiosity.
Yeah. That's a great point. You do that with your clients generally, Kirsty? Yeah, recommend them going away from their home for a certain period of days and experiencing a no Wi-Fi environment. That's a great idea.
Yeah, we do. And for me, in my own personal situation, going out bush we know that the 3-day effect, some great research on that, the 3-day effect kicks in at 3 days when you're out in the bush. Completely changes brain waves and what's happening within your body. And then by about day 5, we see all these anti-inflammatory properties really kick up. So I go on hikes for 5 to 7 days at a time in the bush with absolutely no stimulus. And that's when you really know what your body is up to, as opposed to all the stimulus that we have in our current sort of way we live. So I think a lot of people just don't actually know what's going on with their body and how it can feel. So this is a really, really important piece of information in the course.
So it's like if you don't ever turn the off button, you don't actually know what the on button is doing.
Yeah, exactly. So Chris, what might be, the number one symptom or a collection of number one symptoms that you might get, so you see or suspect EMF is contributing to that health concern for someone?
Yeah, it's a good question, because invariably when you start looking at research and you start dealing with clients, some of the actual symptoms that they're presenting with are very common and ones you may not attribute to EMF. So I like that point where you have to actually do a reset to see what happens with those symptoms. So look, for example, like common symptoms like depression, anxiety, headaches, sleeping issues, and then cognitive issues, brain fog are so like prevalent today, and they're normalized. These are the main things that we see in terms of EMF. And it's interesting you said reset going bush. We've actually had a lot of anecdotal information come back when we just get people to turn the circuit off to their bedroom. So the power is off, the phones are off, the Wi-Fi is off, and then they ring us 2 or 3 days later. Interesting, that 3-day effect. They go, oh, you made me sick. I'm detoxing. I feel nauseous. I'm like, yeah, well, you just got into REM sleep and you're just able to run detox programs you haven't had before. And obviously you're going to get reactions as the body is expelling and normalizing. So, and then you get people, I've had clients just say, hey, what did you do? I'm dreaming again. I've had these really, it's like, amazing. So yeah, that's just with a reset in the bedroom. So we're telling people it's common between Sandeep and I is that it's not difficult. That's what we want to present on the course. We don't want to push people out to areas that they're not equipped to do now. That's a journey for them. But we feel that we can really get them to understand those common symptoms they're having and shift that really quickly by some very simple things they can do in their own home.
Yeah, I love that. I love that it's simple, it's achievable. It's not a big, because when you're brain fogged, you feel flat, you've got memory issues, you don't know your children's name, you don't know, like all this kind of stuff. The last thing is then having to think, now I have to action this. So the overwhelm needs to be low. And so that's great that you've factored that in. Someone's actually put up there, and this is actually something that happens to me. It's one of my warning signals is that they get ringing in their ears. So, and this person's put up a comment saying that ringing in their ears in certain parts of the house, like a signal is going through. They're very, very interesting. So the ringing in the ears and then the grinding of the jaw. I see that as, that correlation between parasitic activity and EMF stimulating that. And it's something that we really look for in our clinic. So, yeah.
I should mention that too. That should have been part of the list. Tinnitus is on the rise. Yeah. And I guess in terms of research as well with EMF, generally the more sensitive you are, the more underlying sort of chemical sensitivity and heavy metal toxicity that you do have. So that's another thing. And with Sandeep doing the mineral rebalancing and hair testing, it's a great diagnostic in terms of seeing where someone's positioned, especially when they're becoming more sensitive to this frequency. I found that in my own life. When I've done the rebalancing, my sensitivity has decreased markedly. And I'm also sleep in a canopy. So I've done everything I can to push that needle.
Amazing. I think the reason why this information and the course is so important also is specifically with tinnitus. And I've got a client that I'm working with at the moment, and there's this sort of information about, well, then you need to put white noise on and you need to go into dark rooms and all of this information, which actually is just a hub for more EMFs. So a lot of the treatment for tinnitus is actually compelling the issue because there's no sunlight, and it's like with the white noise, it's on your phone that's connected to the speaker that's connected to the Wi-Fi, and it's like, oh, what? This is not how we're going.
That's right.
So
I was going to also say, just with you mentioned tracking sleep and tracking using Fitbits and Oura rings and things of that nature. I'm not against that, but essentially people should understand that they can take that data without having those antennas on, and then they just sync with the app once the data is taken. It's an important point.
So important. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Chris, why would doing this course be a good way to go if someone is wanting to improve their health? So how's this going to really support someone? So they've got health concerns. Now, it could be anywhere on that spectrum from like just a niggling, no, something's not quite right, to right where all three of us have been in our lives where we're like in bed and not functional. So how's this course going to be supportive of someone's health, no matter where they are on that continuum?
I think the main the first point is education. So understanding why it's an issue has to be the basis of why you'd actually do any action or changes to your lifestyle. And then the course is there's a lot of meaty sections in relation to practical changes they can make to their technology, and also their relationship with technology. You know, when I do a consult, the first question is usually, what's your relationship with your phone? Are you sleeping with your phone? Right. So we try and inform the basis of why that might not be a good idea, in terms of actually use the regulatory bodies around the world are telling us you're only really supposed to use the phone for 6 minutes before the thermal effect happens. And we know in building biology and biological effects that things happen to our cells way before that thermal effect occurs. So, you know, when you're cooking a piece of steak in the microwave, it's when it's heated up and cooked, the damage is done. So I feel this is more educational, and then there's a big practical element. So they can really shift the needle on their own behavior, and then start feeling those things manifest in their own health, because it can be quite quick when you get rid of this stuff, that you can actually sense things changing very quickly.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another way that's going to improve their health is there's something quite amazing about the empowerment of being in charge and making decisions and knowing how to make those decisions and actioning those decisions. So the empowering effect that a course has on knowing what to do and how to action that and feeling confident to do that, I think is such a key part of improving someone's health with this kind of information.
Yeah, we've spoken about that pretty at length over the last couple of weeks, where a lot of information is coming out, giving us the doom and gloom and the negative and all the things that is going to stress our nervous system out. And then they give you a little sliver of light for a solution, and you go, I want to just stress myself out. So we're very conscious about building this in a way that doesn't do that as much as we potentially can around the issue. So yeah, that was a brief that we wanted to make sure it was practical and allow people to be empowered when they have the solutions, and give them those behavioral change steps they can do.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that that you can feel really anxious if you first become aware of the effects of things like EMF on your health, and it can feel very overwhelming. And just getting some really basic steps in place, as I mentioned, what I did in my home, or what you've done in your home, Kirsty and Chris, that those things have made the difference for us, generally speaking. And if someone who does this course can just get those practical steps, go through them, and realize that this is actually something they can feel a sense of control over. It's not something that's always going to be overwhelming and anxiety producing for them. Then you can get to a place of feeling confident and calm about it. Yeah. And that also helps.
Oh yeah. That then completely reshapes how your body perceives and the stress response and inflammatory response in your
exactly
body. And there's so many cool things that you can do. So it's not about like, it is what it is, this is the way the world's going. Like we don't have to go into that space at all, because there's just some really cool empowering steps that you can make. And like you said, after a couple of days, it's mind-boggling how much it changes how you feel.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, like in one of the units on mobile phones, we give people like 10 steps, behavioral change steps. We just say like, start with 1 or 2. Like you don't look at this whole list, just do one. It's presented that way.
Yeah, that's it. Like Chris talks about, just start off with turning off your Wi-Fi at night. Just start with little simple things like that. It doesn't have to be really invasive to start with. And once you notice the benefits, you might want to keep doing more. You can find out about wiring into your internet. You can find out about various other interventions, but start small. And anything you do in this space is likely to give you some benefits.
Yes, yeah. And it can be fun. The kids and I bought an old school vintage phone. And then and so the old school vintage phone into the modem, and the modem's obviously turned off into Wi-Fi. And we call Nana and Papa on the vintage phone instead of calling on the mobile. And so they just think it's hilarious because none of their friends have an old school phone. But, you know, for me, it means I can actually speak to my mum for quite a long time. Whereas previously I would get quite unwell if I spoke to her for more than a couple of minutes. And she lives in a different state. I need to chat to my mum for more than like 1 minute and go, okay, time to go. So, you know, there's fun things going back to kind of old school fun, and the phone dials round. Some of you will probably remember that. So, yeah, like, you know, we can have some fun with it.
Yeah, pull out the phone book again and start thumbing your way through the phone book, A, B, C, D.
But everything's retro. Everyone loves retro these days. We're going back to the future, so why not?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't think I'd find one. Of course, I went online and yes, everything's retro. And I'm like, I'm not paying that for a phone, like, you know, for an old school phone. There's been a great question here, and we will cover this off now. I know we're going to get to all the questions at the end, but this is an important one because people will be thinking about this as we're going along. So how long is the course? So it's 6 hours in total. There's a lot of information, but it's broken down into 4 modules and 16 lessons. So it's definitely bite-sized, that you can take one piece and you can break it down and you can take your time to implement these things. So it's not a PhD, it's not anything too overwhelming, but I love the steps and the actions and so forth that you're talking about, Chris. So for those of you who are thinking about joining the course, that's what it is, those 4 modules, 16 lessons, and great amount of information. All right, Sandeep, over to you. So when do you think technology moved away from being focused on solving genuine problems towards it being exploitative and focused primarily on entertainment, human genuine connection? I watched a Four Corners documentary on AI last night, which was fascinating. So hit me with it, because this is I'm very interested in your deep dive on this one.
Yeah, well, you know, I like philosophical questions. So this is one that's I've been chewing over quite a lot. And Chris presents at the start of the course, he presents the history of EMFs and technology. And I was thinking through it. Okay, the telephone, that's definitely that was definitely solving actual problems.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel the advent of the computer was solving actual problems, the internet. You know, and the very obvious point for me was the invention of the iPhone. I felt that's when I feel that Apple and Steve Jobs at that point started going in a different direction with it. Right. And he started thinking, how can you make a device hold the attention of the consumer for as long as possible? So he started going the other direction. And I don't know this as a fact, but I suspect that's what happened when he invented that device, well, he and his team. And so when you had the original mobile phones, their predominant function was just to make calls and to send text messages. And the advent of the smartphone, particularly the iPhone, led to the switch from this device being predominantly for solving communication problems to becoming an entertainment hub and a source of entertainment, I guess, for you.
Provider.
Yeah, that's right. And it started becoming addictive. And so now you see, I think all around the world, if you go to a cafe and you look around, the majority of people will be sitting on their phones. While before the advent of the smartphones and the iPhone, I do think that's when things changed. Prior to that, people used to sit and if they, for instance, the person they were meeting with hadn't turned up, they would talk to other people at the cafe. Now, that very rarely happens now, because the reflex now in any situation, if you don't have something to fill that time, is to pull out the phone. And it's interesting because when you go away from that, and one of the things I've done is go to a non-smartphone called the Mudita. I'm not using that all 24 hours, but for some time I did. And actually, there's actually a phase where you go through anxiety.
Yeah. What if?
Yeah, that's right. You go into those moments. Let's say you turn up at a cafe and your friend hasn't turned up yet for 15 minutes. What do you do with those 15 minutes? You don't know what to do with yourself anymore.
I know,
And
and the social connotations of like, oh, am I a loser? Am I alone? Like, there's all these
yeah.
social connotations. There's feeling the gap of anxiety.
So I think the world changed in the late 2000s. So the iPhone was 2007. So we're talking about 16, 17 years ago. I think though that's where the world has changed a lot towards electronic devices being exploitative rather than solving actual problems. So I guess the good side of that is we're only needing to wind the clock back 16, 17 years. We're not talking about winding the clock back 100 years. That's way bigger. It's still, if you can get to the stage where essentially you're not hooked to your phone all the time, but you're using it as a tool. And the same thing with Wi-Fi. And Chris presents a really interesting slide in the course where between 2002 and I think that it's around 2010. Is that correct, Chris?
Is this the blanketing of the Wi-Fi across the globe? That's 2002 to 2018. Yeah,
2018. So you see, it's kind of that same time period, really. It's towards the end of the 2000s that we started getting a massive invent of Wi-Fi technologies and smart technologies. Chris talks about the Internet of Things in the course, which is kind of a scary new development where almost, all devices are getting plugged into this worldwide, data channel. And so it's about going back to using your phone as being predominantly a tool for communication between people, and taking electronic devices as being primarily connected to the internet via wired connection rather than Wi-Fi. Would you agree with that, Chris? Those as being two of the predominant things.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I think in the course, I think we referenced like the Harvard School of Technology, where they basically say, look, sorry, we just realized we've hacked your dopamine, and and we're not sure what to do about it. And I think Netflix did a good doco on that a couple of years ago, which was really like
the social dilemma.
The social dilemma, and I haven't seen it yet. Maybe I'll get triggered by those things, so I'll leave it off. But in relation to that, in the course, we actually do give people those ways of unplugging. We give you practical ways of actually just and deconnecting from it and doing that slowly. So we've actually tapped into that as well. So I'm really proud of that part.
Amazing. And then I think for the next generation, so I've got kids. My daughter's 13, my son's 15. My son's the only child in his grade that doesn't have a phone, and my daughter, there's only 2 other girls in her grade that don't have phones. And so for them to still continue on understanding how to communicate socially and how to grow those communication skills and to commune with your friends and to play with your friends and to develop those social skills, it's really important that we still continue on. So my son was born in 2007, which was interesting when we talked, 2008. So these are skills that the next generation actually aren't learning. So it's really important for that next generation and for us to leave a legacy. How do you actually hang out with your friends? How do you actually interact and communicate?
Yeah.
Is very, very important. And interestingly, there's a party Maya has this afternoon, and the mum has asked for no phones because last weekend the party went so badly without, they were just all on TikTok.
Wow.
And this is 13-year-old. So the mum that put.
Do you know what? I just add into that. I think it's like a pendulum, guys. Like it's like the saturation point as humans. We go, oh, like it's eating. You can have a plate full of beautiful food there and feel sick because you've overconsumed and you're nauseous, right? Like people are just going to get nauseous and then come back the other way. That's what I truly believe. And my voice has changed because I just was thinking of something that's triggered me off. But the parents who do buy this course, by the end of it, they'll have absolutely no doubt they need to start winding back technology with their children. Absolutely no doubt. From a health point of view. Yeah. Absolutely no doubt.
Yeah, that's not even talking about the social and development aspects of it, which Kirsty's talking about.
Yeah, 100%.
Like from a neuroplasticity perspective as well. Like, don't even start me on that.
Exactly. And I think, one of the models I present in some of my talks is that ultimately health is about a culture of connection. And so it's about being connected with yourself. It's about connecting with the source of the food you eat. It's about connecting with community around you. And that's not just a Facebook community. That's actually a physical community of people. And it's connection with the living planet. And so the connection you get through technology is more of a pseudo connection. You know, through being constantly connected to social media and internet. What we want to do is, we're not saying don't have that at all, but we're saying we want to focus predominantly on connection with living people and connection with the living earth.
Yeah.
And okay, yeah, sure, we also can connect through technology too at times, but that's not the prominent source of connection in our lives.
Yeah, a beautiful word, balance.
Yeah.
Lovely word. All right, let's keep going. So, Chris, what are some simple ways, and this actually dovetails beautifully into what we were just talking about, so of winding back technology. So it is useful and not exploitive. So what are some of those simple ways? We've discussed a few, so we might not, we've already been through this a little bit. So anything else you want to contribute to that?
No, I mean, as Sandeep said, just having a more balanced view of it and understanding both, as you were saying, the relationship to your technology in your home and your workspace is super important to know that you can still use it, but it's the microwave radiation exposure levels just get turned off. As simple as that. You're still using it functionally. We're not about ripping devices off people. You create, it's like if they stopped coffee, tomorrow, no one can drink coffee. Coffee's off the market. You'd have World War III. It's just practical elements that you can take away and do, and start one step at a time. Make sure you understand how to turn the antennas off on your phone. Make sure you understand how to turn the Wi-Fi off on your modem. We go through fairly in depth about different types of modems and how to do that. Some you can just turn them off with an on-off switch. Some you'll have to log into your computer. Some you may have to get rid of the modem you have, because it's just, you cannot do that at all. So we're going to guide people through, and obviously part of that at the end, I offer services where I can actually consult with me and guide people through that process, because I just think we can give great information, but people jump around on the internet and they just feel more overwhelmed than anything, and we haven't created a solution. So I like to consult very closely with clients about that, to do that.
Yeah, because it is like when I learned, oh, okay, so I've got to log in to turn this off. Look, that's actually, it's overwhelming. Like this whole process for me was overwhelming. If this course was around, I was like, hey, Chris, sort this out. I've got to do. Just sort it out for me.
1-800-Chris.
Yeah, exactly. I got, kids to sort out and jobs to do and all the rest of it. So it is nice that, you've got those actionable steps and solutions, because you don't need to be a professional in this space. You just need to know what those steps are.
Yeah.
Okay. Sandeep, what are some of the things our clients can do to prevent EMFs from interfering? And we've gone through quite a few of these already. So just touching on that again, for sleep.
Yeah, so the biggest one, we've already talked about it, is the phone off at night, or at minimum on flight mode. So if you need to use the alarm, then you can turn it on flight mode and that all still works. But even better would be getting a separate alarm clock. I noticed that Mudita, they're actually based in Poland. I'm quite a big fan of them because they use very beautiful ringtones as well. They've actually now got the Mudita alarm clock. I think I'm going to invest in one of those. It's quite beautiful, and it has different tones. Some are, some of them just very gradually increasing. Some of them are hung drum and other beautiful music like that. So yeah, that could be something you could consider, is just having a separate alarm clock. Totally. I use my Mudita phone turned off, and even inside the canopy, that doesn't seem to give any significant EMF, and it has really nice tones to wake up with. So that's one of the really key things. And then the second thing is, if you're using Wi-Fi, start with turning that off at night. And see, if you find that beneficial, maybe start looking into how you can hardwire it in. So between those two things, I think that's a really, really good start for people.
Yeah. And then when you introduce that, yes, you forget, and then you wake up the next, I forgot. And then after you've been doing it for a while, it's this routine.
Yeah.
This is what you do.
Yeah.
You just don't even know you're doing it because it's just your routine. It's like, waking up and having a glass of water in the morning just becomes part of your life. So it's just those initial stages of making those small changes.
Yeah, that's right. I think research has shown there's a certain amount of weeks are needed to kind of sustain a habit, somewhere around 6 weeks or so. So once you've done something consistently for a certain period of time, it'll just become part of your life.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Chris, so tell us a bit about the course. Let's get into some nitty gritty, and then we can go through some of these questions that we've got. But the course is called EMF Made Simple, which I love because that's the whole point of what we're talking about here, is not to get overwhelmed, but to keep it really simple. So tell us about the course and give us some information.
Cool. Sandeep, you've got the slides. Cool. Thank you. Okay. So yeah, as you said, Chris, so we have 4 modules. Kirsty, sorry. I'm having a real shocker with names. Must be morning. So 4 modules split into 16 lessons. And yeah, basically you can go through those at your own pace. Some of them are shorter than others. The middle part of the course is very meaty in terms of solutions. So that's where you're going to find all those solutions. Next, and we'll go through, look at module 1. So module 1, what are EMFs? Like Sandeep said, we like to give a good history. I believe you can understand the future and the present by going back to the past. And we do name a lot of the people involved with the development of EMFs, like Michael Faraday, Nikola Tesla, who's becoming well known, amongst the alternate groups. And then what we actually then get into is a little bit of technical information, but not too much about the frequencies and how the frequencies are and what they do, and then get into more practical situation where we go through a list of the exposures you're potentially having on a daily basis. And then what we do is cap that off by giving you an understanding of what the regulatory bodies across different countries and continents actually say in relation to the point of when the exposure exceeds what they call a thermal effect, which is going to be really important to give you context to actually how you can use the phone in a more healthy way. And then module 2 is EMFs and health, which is a really, really meaty sort of part of the course where we look at biological effects, we look at health effects, we look at the environmental effects and the studies done on the environment and the actual nature and insects and animals around us, and then look into specific conditions like, autism spectrum disorder, neurotransmitter disorders, autoimmunity, the reasons why potentially EMF can be connecting to those types of conditions. And then Dr. Sandeep has an amazing section on EMFs and pathogens, and people are going to really love that because it's all referenced, and it's like, wow, this could be a major segue point into me recovering my health, because if you've had like a stealth infection or a pathogen or dealt with mold, or most of those autoimmune conditions are just microbial issues with vitamin D. It's a massive part of the course. And then, like we were saying before we started, electro hypersensitivity, we bring awareness to what that condition is, what you might be looking at as far as symptom profiles, and also who you can connect to in terms of the medical profession who are specialized in that condition to get more help around that. And then 3, this is really chock full of great information about how to tap into your devices, your Wi-Fi, what to look out for in your workplace and also public spaces. And this is the unit that brings your power back, right? It gives you an idea on how to turn the antennas off on your phone, how to really create those safer spaces, and even in terms of workspaces and connecting with those people who set up your workspaces and how to maybe have that conversation about doing things safely. Yeah. And then this is a great module because if you're a health practitioner or someone likes to geek out on information, there's like tens of documentaries and books and talks and reference studies and websites you can get stuck into and really get to the lengths and depths of the degree you'd like to get into the subject. And then the last lesson is very practical about protective gear, like Sandeep mentioned, canopies, and where you can actually get that information about how to do that in your home. Obviously, we offer those services too, and how to actually go to that level if you like to. So it's really a beautiful spectrum between starting at a very beginner's level and actually upskilling or up-leveling up into a higher degree of mitigation, if that's what you want to do. Yeah.
That number 4, the module 4, far out. It's like, I feel like my last 10 years of understanding this is just in those
It's going to be
four
crammed into
things
that.
of trying to work it out at night time and trying to find information. So that will save people so much time and stress and worry. And there's a question that's just come up about what recommended EMF reader and so forth. And it, you know, it's all in here. You're going to be providing all of those resources. So for the person that's popped that question up, it's all in the course, all the, you know, what do you recommend? What can we get? Where do we go? And to have it all in one place, referenced and also referred to by experts, it just takes all the stress away. It's such a big deal.
Yeah, it's amazing. So yeah, we're running a launch discount for you guys. So this is 30% off the cost of the course with that code EMS launch. And it was $99 US, now reduced to $69.30 for the next 48 hours. So jump on there, get the great discount, and that's available at www.emfsmadesimple.com.
Beautiful, beautiful. All righty.
So also we're putting a bundle together. So there's a 10% discount on purchasing of the courses mold illness made simple bundle. And this is, instead of it being $398, it's only $338.40 for the next 48 hours. You get fantastic value in relation to the courses that Dr. Sandeep has already put together, including our EMFs Made Simple course. And again, you can get that discount at emfsmadesimple.com.
Yeah, and I think if you understand both of them together, the importance of EMFs and mold, see, that's really, really powerful. Yeah. Because they are synergistic, as we talk about it in the course. And the most powerful thing is if you address both in your home and work environments, that's going to give you the most optimal results. So if you have the time available, the Mold Illness Made Simple is a bit longer. It's more like 17 hours. If you have the time available and you can really take the time to go through both courses, so it's going to really be somewhere around 23 hours for both of them. It's really, really worth doing that, purchasing both and taking the time to become familiar with mold and EMF. It's going to really be even more powerful.
And how long is the access to these courses for? So if someone purchases them, how long do they have access to them for?
It's lifetime access. Yeah. We don't take away the access at all.
Yeah. So you might only need to refer to one of these in your current state, but then you might move house, and in 5 years' time, you'll really want to come back and tap into the information because you want to, you know, have a look at that house, or you might be purchasing a new home and you want to wire it differently. There's lots of situations that we come across in our life that this certain parts of this information becomes really important. So that lifetime access is wonderful.
That's right. And we're doing little updates as a regular thing. There will be some updates as we go along. Now, if there's ever a major update and we actually call it version 2, then there may be a small cost to update to the whole new, which is basically a whole new course. Yeah. But you will always keep this version of the course you know, at your beck and call.
Yeah, yeah, it's very important.
So as we mentioned before, just having all this information at your fingertips, having to do all that research yourself, I felt, you know, I had a lot of clients come back to me and say, why don't you put it all together for us? Obviously, that's why we're doing this course. So, but what I'm also offering as is a solution is to consult with me about not just the EMF, but looking at, you know, the lighting in your home, air quality in the home, the water, you know, filtration systems you have, the chemicals you have in your home. And basically, I'm going to be taking you through why those things are issues in the home, give you questionnaires on to identify which ones maybe we need to look at sooner rather than later. And then also put the services together for you at the best possible price with a discount when you need to actually access the professionals to audit the home and do, say for example, put new lighting in, etc. So I'm offering that. It was $289 and it's reduced to $233.50, and that's for the next 48 hours. Again, on www.emfsmadesimple.com. So yeah, offering a personalized service where I can hold your hand through all these types of investigative solutions.
Amazing. And that's actually really important when we know that brain fog and overwhelm and fatigue is a really sort of hard situation and symptom that we have from EMF. So actually taking yourself out of that situation and actioning change is really difficult. So, and if you've got the combo of mold and EMFs, you need support. You need someone to actually do it for you, because it's very hard to organize your thoughts to do it and get started.
Absolutely. And I think that'll be very valuable, actually, especially if you're concerned about your own home and that there may be certain areas where there are issues. This can be a really, really good place to start, just to get some background thoughts. And then in some cases, you may need to get a building biologist in locally. Is that right, Chris?
Yeah, that's right. I'll be liaising with all the local services, no matter where you are. If you're in the US or UK, Canada, Australia, yeah, I'll have everything connected for you.
Yeah, amazing. So there's some great questions as we start to wrap up. Look at us go. We're actually on time. This is awesome. So this is just a wonderful question, and either one of you can answer this one, but how do we know how much we are exposed to on a daily basis without our knowledge? How much EMF are we exposed to? I know it's a very big question, but it's a great one.
Yeah.
Sandeep?
Yeah, I can jump in.
So,
Yeah, I can start if you want, and then I'll
Yep.
lead on to you. How's that? I'll lead the baton.
on.
So it's not, I mean, it's not like everyone is exposed to the same amount, firstly. So it does vary. And so if you're, for instance, in the middle of New York, going into New York City, into a big, one of those big corporate buildings, it's going to be different to if you live out in the woods of Oregon and your work is from home and you're not using, Wi-Fi internet. I mean, those two situations are worlds apart. Mm-hmm. So I guess the first thing is there's a big difference between city life and rural life to start with, in terms of the density of electrosmog. And it all depends on whether you've got your home and your workplace remediated, even to some degree. How about I pass the baton to you at that point, Chris?
Yeah, that's a perfect example. I spend half the time between the city and the country to balance myself out. But a good idea, if you're concerned, is to, you can talk to me about it, or there'll be links in the course, is to get a little meter for yourself. You don't need a super expensive building biologist meter or that measures all the way up to high frequency. You can just use it. I use it as a sniffer. So people can actually just sniff around the house and see electrical fields and magnetic fields, and then microwave radiation coming from phones. And I do it. I'm a bit of a party trickster. I've got all this gear in my bag, and I pull it out at my networking meetings, and I just say, would you like me to measure the EMF in your phone? And they see it go up to, unsafe levels. And I say that, we need to, and I show them how to wind that back, take the antennas down, and it just winds all the way back. And seeing is believing. And they go, wow, okay, wow. Now I know I can reduce my exposure levels. So yeah, getting a little meter is a fantastic start.
Yeah. Well, that's a great sort of way of looking at it. It's very situational, depends on your exposures and your usage and where you live and so forth. Another great question here is about infrared saunas and EMFs. Is it safe? Are there long-term studies on it? I personally love them and feel amazing after having one, but the EMF emissions is always on my mind.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, firstly, there's different types of infrared saunas. So we've got near infrared and we've got far infrared, and some are actually a combination of both. And again, you can use a EMF meter to find out what sort of emissions are coming out of them. The actual near infrared part of the spectrum is actually thought to be very healing. You could still consider that to be a type of EMF. So it's not that every single EMF is harmful. those actual emissions are beneficial. But I think there's certain ones, and I think the most simple form of an infrared sauna is a lamp sauna, where you get the near infrared lamps and have those wired into like a wooden block with or without an enclosure. And we've checked those, and those have very, very small amounts of EMF. Your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I would reiterate those. There are particular brands that people have, and you come and test them and go away. And that's part of the consultation service I do. I'm connected to a lot of again, companies that would produce those, and the ones that are safe, and even the panels, Sandeep, the red and infrared panels, knowing and be connected to companies that have really low engineered those to low EMF. Because there are ones on the internet that you pay top dollar for that are now being exposed to have too much RF.
Okay, great. That's good info.
Yeah. And there's companies like I have a sauna space, one in my house, that is specifically being designed around low to no EMFs. So and I have my party trick monitor too that I check when I'm in there. So you can get around it, which is great. Yeah. But if you're spending your time sitting in this environment that's
but on the other side of it, infrared saunas can be very, very beneficial for detoxifying, of course, getting some of those heavy metals and chemicals and so on out of the system. So if you can find one that's low EMF, I highly recommend using a infrared sauna regularly.
Yeah. Okay. This is a great question. So what would be the likely cause of being able to either handle EMF exposures in some places, but not others? So for example, different houses. So this, leans into genetic, susceptibilities, why some houses may be better than others, possibly with the electricity and how it's wired. So yeah, what are some of the likely causes of being able to handle the EMF exposure in different environments?
You go, Chris.
Yeah, sorry, I've got rain coming down, so hopefully you can't hear it. But yeah, I like the fact about that, like the biological aspect of why someone would be able to handle it more than others. I've recently done some genetic testing, and I know Sandeep is looking into it himself now. Major, very prominent electromagnetic research and doctors are saying generally you become more sensitive when, as I mentioned, you have a chemical profile, heavy metal chemical profile in sensitivities and a load. And then also there's genetics that they've now identified that show people are more susceptible and sensitive with those genetic pathway issues. And I've actually had the, an amazing privilege to sit on a call with clients with that and discuss their profiles. So another part of that is just that ability to recover and reset. Like it's almost like the analogy of drinking alcohol. You can go and drink alcohol every day of the week, but you're definitely going to have to stop doing that over a period of time to help the body to reset. So some of us, especially us with chronic illness, are set up to be a little bit more sensitive than others. And we want to really bring home the fact that we are talking to people predominantly with chronic illness, because Sandeep's a doctor and you coach, and you really have to go down that pathway, because a lot of people say, well, I don't feel anything, but that's akin to like just having that alcohol 24/7. Maybe 20 years down the track, there'll be something happen because of just exposure and accumulation and our own genetic differences and epigenetic aspects to that are applicable.
Yeah. And I had my gene sequenced about 10 years ago, and it has informed my pathway so significantly in decisions that I make. For example, do I buy that sauna? And all of these kinds of things, when you know what your susceptibilities are. And like for me, if I've got to go somewhere, I'll actually take my tent and I'll camp outside instead of going into a hotel. And that makes me feel so much better because I know my genetic susceptibilities. So it's some people can find it very overwhelming, but I have found it one of the most empowering things that I've done over the course of my healing journey, because it informs decisions, and I feel very concrete in those decisions. So yeah, I think it's wonderful, but I see it all day long, the genetic susceptibilities, because we do that at Culture Wellness, and we sequence people's genes, and we see all those interplays and the different genes that are causing that inflammatory response. So yeah. And
just a quick jump in on that one. Yeah, so what we found, like for instance, I have a gene mutation around voltage gated calcium channels, so that's one of the really important ones to look at. And in some cases, if people are very electro hypersensitive and their problem is related to calcium, then using a certain compounded form of a calcium channel blocker can be very beneficial. There are certain herbal formulas that can be useful, and then just trying to understand your own biochemistry around what we call oxidative stress is also very useful, and seeing where you could make an intervention. For some people, it might be having hydrogen water. For other people, it could be something else, resveratrol, for instance. So it's if you're really having problems, then having a practitioner who can go really deep into your genetics and biochemistry could be very worthwhile.
Yeah, without a doubt. Sandeep, I'm laughing because remember how I said to you once, was it last year or the year and a half ago? I was like, why am I craving like a whole bottle of wine? I don't even drink. And we were like, I think it's the resveratrol and it's
that's right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that now.
Drink anymore. I'm just
and you felt better on it, right?
Yeah.
The resveratrol, that is.
I had a couple of glasses and I was like, yeah, for some reason. And then we went through and had a look and it was the resveratrol. So all fun and games. Now, someone's just asked if we can please put up the discount codes again. And
sure.
So if you go to emfmadesimple.com, all the information's there, and either Sandeep or Chris will pop up the codes now so you can get that going on. There will be an email that's going to go out after this with the discount codes, the replay, all the information to follow up on today's talk. But we haven't gone too far over time. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Here's the discount code there, which is the EMS launch, which is 30% off, and that's in US dollars. And so, but also watch out for the follow-up email. When will that email go out? Will it over the course of the weekend?
Yeah, over the next hour or so. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that'll be Caleb. And a big thank you to Caleb Rudd, who's put all the technical side of this together over the last few days. It's been a huge job.
Yeah, legend, Caleb.
Yeah. So congratulations, Chris and Sandeep. It's such a wonderful course and it's such a great gift to the community and to humanity for you to provide such information, and people are going to benefit so much from this. So thank you once again. And if anyone has any questions, just reach out once that email comes out. And thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks.
Right, thank you, Kirsty. It's a really great questions you're asking, and it's good to be talking with someone who really gets it and themselves.
I live and breathe it. The word hack my health has been like, just had to. So yeah, thanks for having me. I'm very honored to be here today.
Great, thanks everyone, and thanks Chris for all your hard work on the course.
No, thank you. Appreciate it, everyone.